Hi, Levi.
Hey.
Welcome to
Yeah, we're doing it.
Ride the Line. This is going to be my first podcast with you.
I'm excited.
A little bit of an intro. Talk about yourself, where you came from, what brand you run.
Yeah, so Levi Conlow, CEO and co-founder of LECTRIC e-bikes. I founded it with my childhood best friend from Lakeville, Minnesota. Him and I met back when in 7th grade, and I moved out to Arizona, started my first version of LECTRIC, and then eventually recruited Rob. We went into e-bikes and have been,
When you say first version of LECTRIC, what is that?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
That's a failed college experiment is how I would summarize it. So I originally sold electric skateboards. I really wanted a boosted board when I was in college, but I couldn't afford it. Like, it would literally have taken all the money out of my bank account. So instead, I tried to source one and see who was making these and where I could find someone that could make me one. So I ended up flying over to Asia to find someone to make me one. Well, anyways, my flight to China was like $300 round trip. It was a terrible flight path, and I was like right next to the toilet.
What, were you in a cargo plane? $300.
It was insane. It truly was. But I get over there, and then I was able to find some of these getting made, and I'm like, shoot, I got, there was like less than $2,000 in my bank account. So I'm like, all right, I just spent $300. Let me buy like 4 of these skateboards. And so I brought them back with me in my checked baggage. I had to airmail the batteries over, but yeah, I ended up selling 3 of them on campus, which paid for my board, my trip to China, and then I had some money left over.
So do you come from a skateboarding background? Is that what you kind of
I love skateboarding.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I grew up skateboarding, snowboarding heavily in Minnesota. Like, that was like my life, was just shredding. So
now, when you say failed college style company, was it LECTRIC skateboards?
It was electric longboards.
Okay.
Was the name of it. Yeah. And so, I got to the point where I was selling like a couple $100,000 worth of these out of my dorm room every year. Like, it was a decent little business. Yeah. My dorm room was full of these things. The campus eventually gave me like a little piece of one of the buildings to like try to run this company out of.
That's amazing.
So it was a really cool story, but ultimately I was 19, didn't have a ton of experience. My whole life I was always an entrepreneur, so I'd never had like a real job. I was always just like making my own little business, and so this was that, but now suddenly at a way bigger scale than like my own car detailing thing.
Were you going to school for this, and that's what you were just kind of testing it as you're at school?
Yeah. So went to school for business entrepreneurship, and then I got my master's in business leadership. And I always knew that I wanted to run a company, and there was a school like pitching competition and business competition, and that was actually one of the reasons why I created the business plan, decided to like actually turn it into something. And like, again, semi-successful. The problem is like I tried to make the leap from just like OEM, like importing these and putting a logo on it, to like designing my own. And at that point, I didn't have the skill set, and I definitely didn't have the people around me to do that successfully. So I ended up, like, over years of the OEM out of the dorm room, I built up an inventory of like over $100,000 of free-flowing cash flow to invest back into it. Oh, it was a great way to pay for college and all the college shenanigans that,
I don't see it as a failure then.
Well,
think about it.
Then I designed this new version, and I get the inventory of it. Inventory is terrible. I ended up having to scrap most of it, and the technology just didn't work. And I remember being, I think, 21, and like, that's a tough pill to swallow of like, it was a pretty public failure in terms of like just the university had supported me, and there was so much people knew I was working on this, but then the
That's all right. I'm not worried about people walking by.
Okay, I didn't know. But so, where was I?
You were saying there was a public issue.
Yeah, and so I had to then swallow the pill of like, this inventory is no good. I just made a massive mistake, and this just cost me like $100,000 at 21, which could have really paid for off all my college debt that I had taken and all this stuff. Like, I really screwed up. But I decided instead to just be like, all right, well, I really understand Asia manufacturing right now because I was flying to China frequently when I was doing this. I really understand hub motor technology, any transportation, and I have a pretty good grip on direct-to-consumer e-commerce. So I was like, I'll just start again and try to figure something out. So then that's when I recruited Robbie because he's way smarter than me. And I'll say that very candidly, like mechanical engineer,
well, for people
very
don't know,
calculated.
Who's Robbie to your brand?
He's my co-founder. He's the CINO, Chief Innovation Officer. He's the smart dude in the room that I always try to like bring with me. And so he was able, him and I wanted to do something together. So we decided like e-bikes. My dad really wanted us to do it because he knew I had all this experience. And the whole time I was doing electric skateboards, he's like, please do e-bikes. Your mom and I want those and we don't want to spend $3,000. And so he was kind of the one that pushed us to start electric e-bikes.
So hindsight 2020, looking 4 years now in the future, how many years since your failure of the skateboards?
It was probably 5.5, almost 6 years.
So almost 6 years into the future, do you feel like that failure was necessary for you to be where you're at?
Absolutely necessary. I needed to learn how not to run a business, right? To learn how important the details are. Like I am way more structured, dialed in on the fine details, on the costs, the process, the customer service. Like I had to learn how to do terrible customer service before I could learn how to do exceptional customer service. Like I became so familiar with how not to do everything that when it was time to start new, it was like fresh face. This is a new canvas and I know everything not to do anymore.
Yep.
And so that's what allowed like LECTRIC in its very first year did almost $15 million of sales. Like you can't do that unless you perform like almost perfectly. And Rob and I, when we created the business, I still to this day have the business plan and we executed on that thing perfectly. It was completely calculated and dialed and we're going to advertise here. We're going to do this type of promotion. We're going to build the website this way. We're going to justify someone's purchase like this. So calculated. And Levi and LECTRIC before that just wasn't, right? And so I look at it as a great period now and far more valuable, that failure, than my undergrad and master's combined.
Like in the industry, I feel like there's so many random companies popping up just to make a quick buck and then they leave, or they go bankrupt and then they leave their customers high and dry.
Yeah.
And you were talking about customer service, and I truly believe you pretty much lead the charge in customer service after seeing what I saw at your company when we went there and did that whole media day.
Yeah.
But like I look at like other brands that have gone out of business and been like left people high and dry where they don't have ways to dispute if they have a warranty issue, battery issue. What are your thoughts on companies that come in just to make quick buck and they leave, like coming from China?
I think they have had a pretty rude awakening. It's not as easy as what they thought. They may have thought, oh, I'm going to make a bike for this much. I'm going to undercut the market by this much, and I'm going to make a couple $100.
But I've seen companies, like me personally, I've seen bikes be shipped to me that literally look the exact same.
Yeah.
And like almost like the company went out of business and was like, oh yeah, I can make another business and put their logo, their new logo on that bike.
It's like the Michael Scott, if you watch The Office, when he was doing the Michael Scott Paper Company.
So if you know, how are they able to get away with something like that? And do you believe that creators like myself have, like, not just the ability, but do you think it's our duty to weed them out? Because I believe it's my duty. Like, I try to weed them out. When they send me a bike, I'm like, this is a piece of shit.
Yeah. No, so I think there's a couple things there that are important. So, yes, they come and they go and whatever, and it's often customers that are the ones that are burned and everything. At the end of the day, these companies will fail if you can't deliver customer service. It's just going to happen. It does not matter how good of a bike you make or whatever. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it's a whole experience that someone is investing into. It's not a purchase. You're not just buying an e-bike. You are investing into a partnership and a relationship with this company, because every single bike that I sell and my competition sells is going to need some form of support, some form of maintenance. I need a resource. I've never, done my brake pads before. is there a resource, right? And if that company doesn't exist, of course there's IBDs and everything, but it is going to change the taste in the mouth. But I think what I've been more focused on recently is ensuring, proper safety standards are at play and that people are correctly speccing their product. And I think that is where reviewers and individuals like yourself who have significant influence can help guide and help weed out where it's like, all right, if they are a bad apple in respect to safety standards, they're not UL 2849, maybe don't touch that product, right? If you don't touch it, it will probably apply pressure to them to then get UL 2849. Like they may just need that pressure
I'm a big
in order to get it,
well, yeah.
right? And for us, we care a lot about all these other safety standards that technically aren't standards here in the US yet, but I think will one be. If they then have to do it, it forces you to make better bikes. So then they will make better bikes and everything like that.
So when you talked about customer service a moment ago, not to cut you off,
yeah,
since the thought is still on my mind right now, I remember you telling a story when I saw you last. You were talking about how if a customer has a problem, it's your goal to just right that wrong because that customer will tell their uncle, their friend, and then that turns into a lifetime customer.
Yeah. What an opportunity.
I feel like other brands miss that.
What an opportunity to really create a salesperson. We're a direct-to-consumer company and we only have like 100 people, right? And over half of all of our sales come from referral. And so that means our riders are always a possible salesperson, and it's our job to turn them into it and for them to want to do it, to not, because the economics of the business, we can't really do a commission or anything like that, but we want them to be so happy with the business that they want to help us be successful and help us grow. And so, yeah, all the time, if I bet in the comments, you'll probably hear a story of someone like crashing their bike, breaking their display. They were outside of warranty. They hit LECTRIC up, and then my team is like, first make sure they're cool and like they're not injured, and send them a display. Like they just took a spill. Like we don't want to profit off of that. Like let's just do the right thing and take care of them. And when you do that, no one expects it because they're like, oh, I'm outside of warranty and I crashed my bike. Like there's no way LECTRIC's going to cover it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, if financially it's something we can like cover and it's not a huge deal to us, then let's just do it. And and now you just created someone that's like a cheerleader and going to tell everyone how sick you are.
I went through a similar occurrence with Lunicycle.
Okay.
So I bought the Talaria MX-5.
Yeah.
And then Talaria MX-5 had a fire issue.
Okay.
And I was immediately spooked off. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to pull my sale back.
Sure.
And then Lunicycle reached out to me and I did a news segment. And we were talking about what they're going to do to try to litigate the situation. They went above and beyond. I mean, this is where I think like companies like yourself, and maybe Lunicycle knows about how you guys deal with customer service, but I feel like Lunicycle is one of those companies where they went above and beyond and were like, full refund, no problem.
Yeah.
If when you do want to make another purchase, Mike, we're going to throw in a seat. We're going to throw in handlebars. We're going to right this wrong. We want you to continue to come back.
Totally.
And I'm like, they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
They were put in a really tough situation, lost probably a lot of money.
Yeah.
On that. And it's good to see like companies like yourself. I feel like you're leading the charge with that. I don't really see other e-bike manufacturers kind of going above and beyond in that sense.
Well, you don't, like, if you make an awesome bike and you have an awesome company, you don't have to do the song and dance, smoke and mirrors kind of thing of like almost tricking people.
You don't publicize it. You're not telling people you're doing this. You just do it, and then people in the comments or word of mouth are like, yo, LECTRIC hooked it up.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And so it's just like, we don't have to do this little, try to trick people into anything. Like, we want to do the right thing, and it's our strong belief that if you do the right thing as a company, you're just not going to lose. Like, it just works out for you. Like, goes around, comes around. And like that, we just have ran the company that way. And there's no shortage of mistakes. We've screwed up so many times. We at least try to learn from those mistakes and do better. Like, there's been periods where, there's extremely long waits, like 4, 6, 8 month waits for some of our bikes, and people have to wait, and we miss shipping delays. And we always say, like, hey, like, totally can cancel whenever. Like, we don't want to feel like you feel like we're holding your money hostage or whatever. Like, we want to get out of this. We hate that we're in this situation, and once we're in stock, you can come buy from us then, like whatever. And people like that. They like just the transparency and
Absolutely.
the honesty of like, we are human. We're going to screw up. We're going to miss shipping timelines. But try to be honest and show them that, hey, you can still cancel. We're trying to get better and we want to get out of this hole so we can actually meet and exceed your expectations going forward, even if we're not doing that today. And I think that type of communication really resonates with a lot of people.
Have you had something similar, if you are able to divulge it? Have you had something similar where you've been like, oh shit, like we have to fix this and we have to let these customers know? Whether it be like defects or bikes that you couldn't ship because they didn't come across in the boats or whatever.
Dude, we've had so many like shipping screw ups and everything like that, like especially during COVID, that was gnarly. But you know, we've had manufacturing problems. We had a very known one, and that's something well covered one with our recall last year, and I pitched the team. We took the most expensive approach possible on it, but my message was, guys, we can afford to do the right thing, so we're going to do the right thing, and I can guarantee this is not going to hurt our public image if we do this the right way. If we try to be cheap and try to do just the bare minimum or put our head down and act like nothing's the matter, that's how you ruin a company. There's no shortage of examples of companies doing that exact thing. What if we do the opposite and we overreact? We upgrade everyone's bikes from mechanical to hydraulic brakes. We pay for the installation, and we do this all faster, even though the CPSC is not even requiring us. We do it faster than the CPSC and everything, and we force the CPSC to do a notice, and it took them 5 months. But by the time they made their announcement, we had already preached everyone, converted almost everyone's bikes and everything. We tried to do it how we thought it should be done.
I think it's amazing, and it probably went unnoticed.
Well, and that was the thing.
Because I feel like this is maybe the first time besides our dinner sit down that I've heard that story.
People our brand could have been ruined, right, with a proper recall, whatever. But so many people were just stoked, oh, they're upgrading me to hydraulic brakes, sick, whatever. And since then, we've moved our whole product line to hydraulic brakes, even our $799. We were the first company to ever do an e-bike under $1,000 with hydraulic brakes. Now we're the first company under $800 to do hydraulic brakes as well. So, the product is so important when you're in this space, and so you always got to put attention. You don't want to rely on how you react to situations like that. You don't want to have to rely on your customer service. It's better just to nail it. But there's been learnings and developments, and I think the product we make today is so much better than the product I made 5 years ago, and I'm pretty stoked at what the product even looks like in 5 more.
Yeah. What are your thoughts with the impending regulations that keep happening in states, whether it be licensing, insurance, battery regulations? Where do you see this going, and do you think it's beneficial?
Dude, it's tricky, right? Because I like safety regulations and standards. I think that's great. I think some of the performance regulations can, I love to go fast personally, and I like the power, but I understand why there's this need. I hope we don't overcorrect. There's a lot of chatter about certain states implementing certain things. At the end of the day, electric is going to roll with the punches and make our bikes to serve the riders out there. We've seen heavy regulation exist in a place like Europe, and although that's harsh, and I definitely do not want that type of regulation and limiting here in the U.S., I will say over in Europe, they outsell the electric bicycle significantly compared to here in the US.
Do you think that's because the infrastructure is so
I think
much more refined?
Partly, the penetration rate of the electric bicycle to the bicycle market, even just in terms of a ratio. So regardless the volume of units, in Europe, in places like Netherlands, Germany, and others, it's 50% of all bikes sold are electric. Here in the US, that number sits at about 7 or 8%. So all things considered equal, if we only look at the penetration rate, that number needs to significantly increase. And so even if there is regulation like that. I don't think it kills the industry, but the industry will have to adapt. And I do think it's a bit more challenging because of the way our infrastructure is built, because of how spread out it is. It's going to become more difficult to use an e-bike as a viable transportation solution if you're limited to 15 miles per hour.
Well, where do you think it goes from here licensing wise? Because my personal opinion, I think you shouldn't have to have a license to have an e-bike, just because there's a lot of people that can't afford, let's just say, car insurance.
Yeah.
And then you're asking somebody to, okay, I mean, for you being a business and owning electric bikes, you would then have to list on your website, this passes these regulations, this will pass at your local motor vehicle when you have to get it tested to get your license. I feel like that's
it
way
creates
too
barriers,
far.
right? And that's the maturity of this market is not far enough where those types of barriers are easily overcome. Like those are things that could significantly harm the industry and the market, and we don't want to see that happen. And I don't know that it is going to. I think there's a lot of sweeping broad regulation that's coming. How granular it gets, I'm not sure.
You think it's more like age related?
I do, and I am someone that believes, riders should be a little bit older, and it freaks me out a bit when I see like a 15-year-old on an e-bike, because that's a lot of power, right? You could be providing a kid with 1,000 or even 2,000 watts of power. Are they equipped? Are they safely trained and informed?
Exactly, the knowledge behind it.
Yeah, as we grow up, I love to go fast, but I also know the responsibility and understand the riding environment far better than many youth. So yeah, it's something we have to be aware of as an industry and super careful of. It freaks me out when some of my competition advertises e-bikes to kids, and I saw an ad from one of the big players that it was an e-bike and kid was riding and the kid wasn't wearing a helmet. I'm like, dude, guys, that's just stupid. What are we teaching them? So that stuff kind of grinds my gears.
I'm a big advocate of that. When it comes to battery regulation, that's where I wanted to really dig into, because you have cities like New York City that are created task forces to be able to attack this. I know you guys are UL certified, so you don't really have anything to worry about there. How do you feel about the battery regulations when it comes to the average consumer?
I think it falls, that in particular, I think a lot of pressure should be applied to manufacturers and sellers. I think dealers, sellers like myself should be held accountable, and we should have pressure applied to us to meet these standards, because customers are not always going to be informed or have the capacity or the way to know. So if you're going to sell in New York, you have to be compliant, right? And if you're not, New York should come down on you, because
they're not just selling, they're also building them.
Yeah, and New York and what's going on there, it's my hope that LECTRIC can start capturing some of those customers. We've come out with our new cargo bike that has a 35 amp hour battery, has a great throttle, can carry all that weight, because a lot of these are delivery drivers. Like most of the e-bikes there are delivery drivers. So we want a product that can meet what their requirements are and everything. So it would be nice to be able to.
Well, sticking on the New York topic, there's so many different food delivery drivers, which mean there's companies. Have you ever toyed with the idea of possibly working together with a Grubhub type of a thing?
I have, yeah. I don't think the emails usually get very far, They I think like to shed the responsibility, because a lot of those workers are contracted and whatever, so they kind of like to keep a lot of that at arm's length.
What about the charging options? There's been different charging options that they've had, where I see like battery dispensaries where people can put them in lockboxes.
Super cool. Yeah,
but they're kind of limited to which style batteries, and would that fall in line with something that your bikes use?
It depends. Probably not. But if that became more standardized, I would love it, right?
Because that'd be something LECTRIC would be willing to kind of invest. Yeah,
totally. We would build product to accommodate that type of solution. Really if that became commonplace, and there's these safe charging structures and everything. Now, I will say, through extensive research and testing. There is tremendous value in just by simply having UL 2271 and UL 2849. And so am I concerned about charging and battery safety that much today compared to where I was probably 4 or 5 years ago? Like, it's a completely different game.
I mean, it's just so
now.
cool to, like, when I watched them do that, they had like the little drop boxes. You could put your dispense battery in there, boom, take another one out.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you find that the majority of the bikes that are being used are, let's just say, electric bikes, or if you had some type of partnership with Grubhub or anybody else, your batteries then could be within these things. And it's almost like, I mean, yes, it's a brand thing as well. You'd have your logos everywhere, but it's like you're contributing to the betterment and the ease of society as well.
Dude, totally. Yeah, it would be awesome. You know, I hope there's a couple startups that are doing it right now. You know, I'm cheering for them. I hope that they can find success and rhythm. But there's so many of them right now that it is quite crowded because it makes sense to you. It makes sense to me. It's like, that's an awesome solution, especially as a delivery driver. You can just ride all day and just grab a new one and keep
You never
going.
have to wait. You can just unplug it.
Right.
Now, changing gears, I had to write this question down because I really wanted to try to tap into, not being a business owner, you might be able to kind of understand where this man's coming from.
Yeah.
I wrote down, I was like, we just got done a pretty intense election, and Elon Musk, who pushes the electrification of transportation, has joined the Trump administration. It's my opinion that the electric vehicles have been way too politicized, and those have been the driving factors, in my opinion, of the division that everybody's had in the two-party system. What are your thoughts with him joining the administration as a consultant, and do you think, being a multi-business owner like himself, that he'd be able to juggle these things?
Sure. I think it's going to be challenging. You know, I am extremely good at building e-bikes and running an awesome e-bike company. You know, I am probably the least political person in the world. I don't follow the politics. I don't cheer for one party or the other. You know, because the reality is I have found success as a business owner under Democratic administration, a Republican administration. Like, I've made it work in every scenario, and you know, I plan to have it continue to work for me regardless who sits in office and whoever sits, you know, in their cabinets and everything like that. So speaking for myself though, like, if you want to run a business well, it demands everything you have, and it's so taxing, and there's this constant pursuit for improvement and growth and whatever it is, whether it's, you know, selling one more bike or making the product better. It demands so much of my life and attention, and that's at this scale, that I think it could be incredibly challenging and perhaps unrealistic to have all these other companies that are at completely different scales and, you know, taking on a role within the government. It seems improbable, but you know, I hope the best of any administration that's serving this country, and I really hope that they serve the people well, and we all experience great success.
Absolutely. So, like, thinking about that, like, I've followed his story before with, like, getting the Tesla Model 3 up off the ground.
Yeah.
Like, him seeing videos of him sleeping on the floor in the factory. Like, I look at that as, like, inspiring. Maybe I'm not to that scale, and maybe you're not to that scale if you slept in the factory in China waiting for your bikes to get built. But, like, it's inspiring because you're like, he's a go-getter.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with SpaceX, spending his last fortune to put a rocket in space. All these little things. So, like, whether you love him or hate him, I see that as, like, that go-getter mentality is super inspiring, and I just wanted to see, like, what your point of view was. You see that as
it's everything.
Yeah.
Like, I have a huge belief that attitude. There's this quote by Charles Swindoll that I heard when I was a kid, and I've basically dedicated my whole life and the way I function around it. But it's a long quote, but to summarize it, it's like, you know, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. And your attitude is the one thing you can control. It's the one string you can play, so play that string. Control that one thing that you can control. Actually take control of it. And so attitude plays so many roles where it's like, how bad do you want it? Like, that's part of your attitude. How hard are you willing to work? Are Are you going to have the attitude of trying to do the right thing and lead, people in a certain way? Like, that is all variables that you have control over. And that is something that I really try to obsess over and constantly improve. I think of myself as a CEO 5 years ago and the CEO today, and I'm more proud of this version. And there's a continuous development that has to happen because the company is growing, right? It demands a CEO that's better. If it's going to grow, I better be growing just as fast, or if not faster, to be even worthy to stay in this role with this company. I have the best job in the entire world. I love it. It's so sick. Like, I never want to lose this role. And so I'm going to continue to, be my very best so I can actually deserve this role.
So it's interesting how you answered the question about, like, you've run a business under different administrations and you've had the same outcome in a way. So basically, you leave politics at the door.
Correct.
When you come into business, because no matter what, you're still going to be a go-getter. Do you encourage that with your employees as well?
Yeah, I do. And, the team kind of has that mentality, right? After the recent election, you have some people that were really bummed, and you have some people that are really excited. And, I try to deliver the message of, like, guys, first of all, like, we all care about each other, right? And what's important to you is important to me. Regardless of the side of the aisle you sit on, like, it's important to me. So I appreciate and recognize that you may be disappointed or that you're really excited. But at the end of the day, we got a job and we got to be successful. And so let's just focus on that. We can control that. There may be new variables, but, like, it doesn't mean we can't deal with it. The world didn't end for us. So,
All right, so what are some regulations that you would like to see changed, if any, whether it be ones you already agree with or disagree with incentives? Because I look at, like, the incentives policies that kind of happen with states like Colorado, right?
Sure.
Do you believe that more states should take that on? And I know that, like looking at the car industry, for instance, we'll use Elon Musk as an example and Tesla. Tesla, I think, would thrive whether the incentive of $7,500 is there or not. But I believe Ford would not. Do you believe that the incentive program will be something that will make or break a bicycle company?
It shouldn't. Okay. That is my opinion, is that it should not. If you have to rely on an incentive program, you have a really terrible e-bike business and model and products. Like, there was a period where at the federal level they were talking about a incentive program, and
they do it as a lottery service in Colorado. I saw.
Correct. Yes, but they were looking at something for the whole country, right? And it was amazing to see as that started to materialize and actually gain some traction. We saw all of our competition raise their prices because now it's like, we can just make more money and charge more for the same thing. And it's like, guys, it's not for our benefit. This is a benefit for, so when it ended up not going through, everybody then brought their prices back down, which was so dumb. But, I think that something like that is additive. Like, it is so cool that those exist in certain states, like Colorado and Washington, D.C., Minnesota. There's actually probably a dozen or so that exist right now at various levels. So it's sweet that it exists, but it is for those that need it. I'm of the opinion. Like, a lot of these programs are for those who financially may not be able to get an e-bike.
So they're able to do that based on your income.
And so, like, yes, let's get them riding. Let's provide that assistance. But I'm of the opinion that so much of that responsibility should actually be falling on the companies and people like myself. I control my business. I control my price. I control my value. Anybody can go in and build a bike and put it out there, but it's always up to us to decide what is the price point it's going to be at? What is the value we deliver, right? Do we want to shaft a customer and overcharge them? Or do we want to just prioritize? If I actually believe, in electrification of transportation and e-bikes and e-mobility being a solution, then I should put my money where my mouth is and try to price these things as low as possible. There's no reason for me to sell my cargo bike at the price I sell it at. But I do it anyways because that economically makes sense for me, so I'm not going to sell it for $1 more. And
it's really interesting to see, like, how you're able to keep such a successful business out of a lower priced item, not in a bad way, lower priced item, but just a lower priced item. And then I look at like comparable bikes and I'm like, why is that bike $400 more?
Right. Yeah.
Why are they not where electric is?
Right.
So then I try to like I'm trying to figure out like, what does electric do that's different? And then that kind of drives me into the question of what drives you each day. Are you competitive?
I love to win. I want to beat my competition so bad.
So when you wake up each day, it's like, that's the goal. It's not like, oh yeah, we want to make this sale.
Violence is what I wake up each day. I wake up totally ready to go to war. I just like competing and winning and everything. And this is what, I wasn't an athlete or anything of the sort. And this is a way for me to kind of get that competitiveness out and play a game that I'm very good at. Like, I'm very good at working at an e-bike company and building sick products with an amazing team, and I want to flex that, and I want to just, there's been so many times over the last 5-6 years where like LECTRIC was not taken seriously because it was started by, I think Rob and I were 23 or 22 at the time. Nobody really took us seriously. The sales were abysmal. And you had companies that had hundreds of millions of dollars of funding, team sizes way bigger, got executives from really amazing companies and all this stuff. And we were just two 20-something-year-olds. And these fools somehow lost to two 20-something-year-olds. And I think back to 2022, where we were almost doing like $100 million a year at that point. And the team was still incredibly small. We didn't have much funding at all. And we were just smoking competition. And it's like, dude, how are you guys losing to these guys? And now we have great team members and everything like that. But, everybody on our team has a very competitive nature, whether it's a CSR or someone on the C-suite. We want to win and we want to beat others. It's like...
So in the competition scale, as you're chopping away at companies, where do you feel like you are in the competition, as in without, you don't have to say if you don't want to, do you feel like being at number 1, number 2, number 3 spot, do you feel like even if you are at number 1, do you feel like you're always needing to go to the next number 1, or do you feel like you're just defending all the time? Yeah,
so we're at the number 1 seller of e-bikes. I think you were there for our 2023 banner drop, right? So in our nature, we like to win and whatever. And so it's so you hit that. That was our first time for a full year that we were number 1 seller. Mm-hmm. And it's we didn't blow away the competition, right? Yeah. But now this year it's all right, well, let's try to beat them by 20 or 30%. Yeah. And then you think what else can we do? So we've been scaling. You can never, these are cool checkpoints. Mm-hmm. Getting within the top 10 is a cool checkpoint, the top 3, cool checkpoint, number 1, cool checkpoint. But it's doesn't mean the race is over. It just is a checkpoint to show that, hey, you're on the right, you're doing the right things, you're headed in the right direction, but you're not done, dude. So and I've sold 500,000 e-bikes now, and I don't even place that much importance on that number because I'm already that number is not even cool until I can add another 0 to it. And the reality is if you were to talk to me a couple years ago, getting to 100,000 would have been so cool. Yeah. But then by the time I get there, I'm stupid. Yeah. Let's try to get to 1 million. And it's just that constant obsession of not feeling like it's enough and growing.
Where do you see LECTRIC in 5 years' time?
Well, I
want... And do you have any secrets in the pipeline for new bikes, maybe?
Now, we're always working on sick bikes, right? We always have cool new bikes being worked on. But, where we are today in this position, I look at it with a great deal of pride because we did a lot with very little. Now we have a really talented team around us. Now we have more economies of scale. Now we have more leverage within our headcount and getting more out of each person on the team. Our products are only getting better. So I think pretty confidently that we will very much have this number 1 position in the market. I'm just interested in how can I take more market share from everybody else. I want to rip it out of their hands. I'll look at my product category And like the off-road category, for example, like I sold 0 bikes in it. And then in its first year of us launching the X-Peak, it becomes the second best-selling in that category. And like I wake up angry because I'm not number one, and I'm not going to rest until that's number one. I want the number one selling cargo. I already have the number one selling trike. I already have the number one selling folding, the number one overall. But I want commuter, I want cruiser, I want off-road. Like I will continue to make product that is so good that you're just like, dude, I got to rock with LECTRIC, because it's like I'm going to pay $400 or $500 more and may get something that is literally worse than what I'm offering. And so, you know, that's kind of the recipe that I plan to still follow over the years to come. And we're 20% of the electric bike sales here in the US, but like, I don't know, I'd be stoked to like double it. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. I feel like the brand has really taken off in different ways. Is there an avenue that you've thought about going down that you're like, no, we're not doing it?
No, I rarely cross something off. Like I'm always pitching stuff of like, dude, guys, let's do some off-road stuff. Like I love me like a Suron or let's do an electric motorcycle. I ride a Zero DSR. Like, you know, I love that type of stuff. So I always am pitching that stuff, but fortunately I have Robbie and a great product team to like reel me back of like, Levi, remember when you said this and we were going to focus here? I'm like, yeah, that's right. We're going to stay there. So, but no, I did my electric skateboards. You know, maybe one day I'll go back to that as well, but probably not for a while. I'm still licking those wounds.
So is there any final messages you want to let the people know, where to find you as far as you specifically, and as well as the brand and what you guys want to talk about? No,
well, actually the one thing that I try to champion because people know the customer service, they know the quality of the product, and like those are all well covered. You know, one of the things that when you purchase with LECTRIC is that we very much have giving as a part of our, you know, core of as a business. And so when you buy from LECTRIC, and like I say, invest into LECTRIC, you're investing into that relationship when you buy a bike and you start riding that. You know, we try to be really good stewards of that. You know, I have put my money where my mouth is over the last 2 years, where I say e-bikes are important to electric transportation. Well, we've given away well over 1,000 e-bikes over the last 2 years. No compensation. We pay for the shipping. We had a voucher program. So we've done more for electrifying people's transportation than many state governments have in terms of allocating funds and proceeds towards it. So like, we believe in this. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to try to be good stewards. If I say it's important, then I can't just not do the right thing and get people riding. And all those recipients who have received my e-bikes through that program are individuals who were probably never going to be a customer, right? They financially could not afford it. You know, so many of the recipients may have been a refugee here who can't get a license, but we need to expand their radius so they can go shop at the better grocery store, get the better job or whatever. And it's like, we want to help, and an e-bike is a great tool to help. So let's do it. Let's get them riding. So we've done that at a large scale. And then also over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of huge projects, invested millions of dollars in orphanage in Kailicha, South Africa, a desalination system in Mombasa, Kenya, another like boarding school in Zambia. We did solar electrification of a whole offsite island village near Colombia. We've done a lot, and we actually have ongoing relationships. Like I still go out to these sites and provide resources. We've provided bikes to some of these areas as well. Like we're not going to sell a single bike by putting bikes in Mombasa. It's just the point of giving back. But it's like we want to be good stewards, like who much is given, much is required, or whatever the quote is. And it's like that is our responsibility, is to do good, and we're going to do it. So if you ever choose to work with LECTRIC, you can kind of know, and you can learn more. We have some video series coming out about a lot of those cool projects, and that's one of the things I'm super proud of, is we've been able to do that, and we have more. Like just the amount for a company that's 5 years old and ran by two dudes under the age of 30, we have been able to give a ton back, and I'm really excited to see how we continue to scale that up, because I think we are making significant impact in so many people's lives. I remember one of the girls that was saved from child trafficking in Zambia. Her leg was infected, and Rob and I had to pony up the investment to get her to save her leg, and
That's
it's
amazing.
like we just changed her life. And so we have a lot of projects that are active, and yeah, we're stoked to do more.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on here, and we should definitely do this again here soon.
Yes, for sure.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Cool.